Good morning. When I woke up, I converted my highlights into reels so that I could share my stories or the collections of my stories that I was talking about yesterday with you guys. And then Instagram. Apparently this is something it does regularly. It didn't work right. So I'm going to be deleting the reels that I just posted, and I'm going to re-upload them throughout the day, because that's not all of them. And some of the longer stories, like huge chunks of them aren't there. So bear with me. Oh, and also because, I keep talking about impending doom. I feel like it's necessary to clarify that the chunks of the stories that are missing, it's only a processing error. The stories, I still have them. It's not like they're actually missing or anything. So, yeah. Okay, bye. All right. I cleaned up the story. I don't know if it deleted one of the stories before the reels that I started posting. It wasn't deleting the first reel, and then it did, and the whole thing looked a little shorter than it had before. So if there is a discrepancy and anybody notices, please let me know. And if there is a discrepancy, then it'll come out in the reels when I re-export them. My God.
Mama, can you come pick me up, please? No, I didn't win. He saw you drop me off. He said, when you die, ain't gonna be no memorials. I know you don't got a car. You don't do drive-bys. You do walkthroughs, tutorials.
Hello. So I wanted to wish everybody a happy lunar eclipse. It is a full moon. It is the blood.
What have you done, Derek? Nothing! You've done nothing! Nothing!
Okay, I'm back for a second. I just went to my Whole Foods interview, and it seemed like it went well, so, sent some good vibes my way. And also, I just brought lunch to my partners, so now that lunch is over, and I am laying in the back of my car. I guess I could give the second reason why I didn't want to talk to Sean Dowdell. The other reason, answer number 2, is that naturally there was and always has been an imbalance in our relationship. I wouldn't use the word adultism to describe Sean Dowdell because I don't know him like that, but I would say that there's always been some veiled sense of superiority, even, unfortunately, when he's done really nice things for me. Okay, so back to the story. It's March 2023. I have received an email from Concord Publishing. I have called Concord Publishing to inquire about the email, and I had a very interesting conversation with them, an inappropriate conversation, I would say. And now I have to talk to Sean Dowdell about the things I don't want to. Mainly his moral compass / work ethic and the natural imbalances in our relationship. I prepared myself for this conversation. I really didn't want to talk to Sean. I cannot stress that enough. I had already been trampled on by people like him, including my mother, Talinda Bennington, for years at this point. And not only was I invisible, but it was clear nobody was going to help me. So even though I had to talk to him, it just kind of felt like a waste of time. And also, all the anxiety and panic that comes with that, it did surface. So, before I called him, I sat down, I did breath work, pretty intense breath work, just to make sure that my body was ready to have this conversation. And then I told myself what we were going to be talking about. Now, the conversation itself was about 3 hours long. We talked about a lot. We talked about a lot of things. Of course, we definitely talked about the things that I wanted to talk about. And I'll get into a few of the details in a second, but I want to say that by the end of this phone call, Sean had me. I'm not going to lie. I went into this conversation with the mind of, maybe you don't know everything. Maybe you've been an outsider to some of these things due to your age, due to the context of the situation, whatever it is. Maybe that's true. And so I approached the situation as if I was someone who was hearing him out, not someone who was coming in with these predetermined judgments on him. And by the end of the conversation, Sean Dowdell just about had me. Initially, I told Sean why I was there. I said I got this I got this email from Concord. When I called them, they were very unprofessional, and they seemed to just be throwing your information around. And I think that that's just something to let you know about. I would want somebody to let me know. But also, since we're here and talking about this thing that's arisen, I think it's really important to talk about some of the things that we haven't talked about, because when my dad died, I was 21, and at this time, I am going on 27. So I think it's about time that we redefine the nature of our relationship and redrew some lines about what we might or might not know about each other. I think that is the responsible and mature thing to do. One of the things that Sean and I talked about was his motivation with grade A's and what the reality of that was for him. I had asked him, why do you do this? How long do you think that you'll be doing this? And I said, it's been almost 6 years. How long do you think you're going to be doing this? And he said that his goal, his only alignment was with my father, that his entire purpose was to amplify his memory, and in order to do that, he wanted to use the music, okay? And I said, all right, but that's not a very good reason, it's been almost 6 years. If you were doing it for him, wouldn't you have been done by now? And he said, no. He said he's not making any money off of this. He's not really getting anything out of it. It's more of a passion project. And that as far as he's concerned, he's been fighting the good fight for Chester behind closed doors this entire time. It was actually Sean describing the grade A situation for himself and his motivations for perpetuating grade A's that drew me to his side. I even told him this at the end of the conversation. I said, Sean, I don't know how to feel about some of these things, but you definitely are making me think, and it's possible that you've changed my mind. He said, well, I would love for you to approve of this DLC deal that we're doing. I said, I'm not a part of the approval party. He said, no, I know, but it would mean a lot to me if you were behind it, of course. I said, okay, well, let me think about it, and I'll get back to you on my decision whether or not to morally back this decision to license a Rock Band DLC deal almost 6 years after my father's death. Sean agreed to give me time to think about this deal. He gave me a week. I was not able to recall this when he mentioned it later. However, even when he mentioned it later, it was by far the smallest trivial detail of the situation and was almost actually something totally removed from the situation because of how fucking crazy this situation gets. Another aspect of this conversation was Sean Dowdell's book, something I brought to the focus because I had recently read it, and now that I was on the phone with him, I had thoughts to share. So I shared them. I told him, hey, you look really bad. I'm just letting you know I haven't trusted you for a hot second because even though you say one thing, you do something entirely different, and from the outside, you look really bad. And, you know, let's talk about the fact real quick that after I told you what Talinda did to me, you still partnered with her and my family estate in order to fund your album, The Phoenix, which is treacherous. How do you say you don't care about someone without saying it? You become a late-stage capitalist. Anyways, I also brought up the fact that not only did Sean out himself as a master Freemason at the end of his book, which is always going to be suspicious, for someone so preoccupied with the dating and explaining of the unfolding of a process, because that's what his book is. It's about how he built his empire, how he's a self-made millionaire. I said, it's funny how a lot of these things are actually not as specific as you say they are. A lot of the things that you talk about, you don't put down specific dates, you put down months, years. And that's just odd to me. Like, if you're going to tell the truth, why wouldn't you tell the truth? If you're building a documentary, why wouldn't you document? If you're writing a memoir, why wouldn't you be as transparent as possible, Master Freemason? I was coming from a very specific place when I asked these questions because at that time, I had already spent 7 to 8 months putting 8 to 10 hours a day into researching my life and Chester's life because there are so many inconsistencies in the reality that I had been made to believe, and all the people who could give me real answers either cut me off, burn me like Michael Weston, or refuse to answer my phone calls. So when I spoke to Sean about this, I already had 400 pages of detailed timelines from 1995 to 2023 December. I'm not fucking around here. I'm the real deal. That's not to mention the fact that while I was doing this research, I was also taking on financial responsibility for people who genuinely needed help. While I was researching, my partner was picking up the financial slack as a cook, and I was helping to raise our nephew on the daily. So while I'm learning about my dad and all the things that have been done to him or not done to him, because you can really tell more about what was done to him by what wasn't done to him. Look. Oh, that's a message from the other side. Let's try this again. So while I was investigating the alleged murder of my father daily, I was also responsible for helping to raise this beautiful baby boy. And I was also working on myself and helping my partner work on themselves. And we were working together to help each other develop our desired reality. So all of this is going on, and I'm approaching Sean from this angle because of this reason. And his major response is the first time I wrote a book. I don't like the way you're using Freemason, and I have privileged information about your father. By this point in the conversation, I had told Sean that I was working on my project, that I was planning on saying something eventually, and that though I didn't trust him, he had started the process of changing my mind. Maybe I would reveal more about my project later, but for now, he's just gonna have to wait for it to come out. And that's around the time that he brought up the privileged information about Chester, because I was asking questions. I was like, okay, well, you know, there's the Concord thing, there's the book thing, there's my project. Like, I don't get to know a lot about Chester. It's really frustrating, and I'm irritated by it. And he said, well, you know what? I know a lot about your dad. I have privileged insider information about your dad before he died, and I would love to share it with you. I'll tell you anything you want to know. I was one of his closest friends, and ever since he passed, I've been on the low fighting these big entities like Warner Music Group, for example. Fighting the good fight, Jamie. I promise. I had told Sean that I appreciated his openness and that I would love to see what he has to say. He said that he wouldn't send me anything because he didn't want a paper trail, but he would tell me about it. And he did tell me about a few fucking things. And I said, wait, you've known this the entire time? And he said, well, yeah, I mean, it's not like public information, like it's nobody's business. Okay, Mike Shinoda, let's calm the fuck down, shall we? If for 6 years you've been sitting on privileged information that literally means the difference between life or death for my father, and you're his, quote, best friend, and you're making albums off of his name, you better fucking tell people what that information is. That's how I felt on the inside. That's what I said on the inside. On the outside, I probably said something pretty similar. But really, I was excited to have access to a well of information on someone that apparently doesn't exist. And so instead of going too hard on the, you had this for 6 years and you've been hiding it from everybody, you don't think is worthy of it? I settled on, hey, well, how about this? I will meet you in Phoenix then. I'll come down to you when I get the chance. Let me sort some things out over here. We got some things going on. I can't really just leave. And we'll plan a time, and then I'll come look at what you got. So I'm not going to tell you everything that Sean said because that guy owes you it from his own mouth. What I will say is that he claimed to have some pretty interesting stuff, and he pulled up those deleted tweets that Talinda posted, those 5 claiming that Chester was dead before they hanged him and that she cheated on him with Mike Shinoda and did it for the money. Those ones. He had those tweets on his computer, which, by the way, are some of the hardest things to find. There's only one source on the internet with those tweets. I thought that was very interesting. I thought, wow, Master Freemason over here not doing fucking anything. Of course, he has a database of Chester's privileged private information that he only shares with people he feels are worthy. Oh, boy. Shh. Come here. Let me tell you something. Look, okay, I know I said that I wasn't going to go into the Sean Dell claims at this moment, and that it was really his responsible to share that information with me, with my family, with, you know, the public. But here's the problem, is that it's been 6 years, and a lot of the stuff that people keep to themselves these days is massively important, and not only will they not share it, but they also won't, quote, stoop down to anyone else's level if they don't consider that person a worthy adversary. So here's what I'm gonna do. Let's start a fire. All right, I got 3 things. I'm gonna dish them right now, and then I'm gonna move on. 1, Chester came to Sean for a fuck ton of money before he died, and Sean gave it to him. 2, Chester and Talinda, at the time of Chester's death, were once again in the process of separating. Yeah, I said once again. And 3, Sean Dowdell says he currently has copies of texts from Chester claiming that Mike Shinoda and the other guys in the band disrespected him for the last time and he was sick of it and he was leaving Linkin Park. Ouch. Ooh. I can't wait for someone to fucking explain that shit to me, because last time I checked, Sean Dowdell has claimed all those things are conspiracy theories, didn't he? Well, he's about to. On with the story. Okay, so back to the story. The conversation winds down after about 3 hours or so. And I tell Sean, I say, I will need to think about the thing that we're talking about. This DLC deal is something that I don't take lightly. If I had a choice, I would say absolutely not, but I don't. So really, it's a matter of either approving of you or not approving of you. And to be honest, this is just weird. Like, why are you still doing this? He says that Rock Band came to them, but still, like, sometimes you should say no. Just a thought. And I also tell him that not only will I be circling back, but I want to send him some of the evidence that I found of suspicious and or outright foul play. He says, okay. So I send it to him. Real quick, there's also some language that needs to be addressed over the course of this conversation. Sean is actively engaging with the things that I'm saying this entire 3-hour conversation, okay? To the point where I'm like, I'll send you evidence, because I'm like, well, maybe he might actually look at it. It seems like he has a database himself, right? Well, part of what he said was, and this was in reaction to me telling him about what I've seen with Mike Shinoda and how I don't appreciate it. He said, if he's doing what you say he's doing, I'll beat his ass myself. And I said, oh, really? So I sent him evidence, and we're gonna get to that. 2 weeks after this phone call, I circle back to Sean, and I'm just like, hey man, what do you think of the things I sent you? You haven't said anything about the 5 articles I sent you. The 2 about Leonard Blavatnik, 1 about Frank Zumo, 2 about Mike Shinoda being hired on for Web3 development under Warner Music Group. What do you think? And he was like, oh, hey, what's up? Like, yeah, you know, I don't really see how any of these things connect. And in my opinion, you know, I don't know where you got these, but like basically it's a rabbit hole and it's not worth pursuing, and I'm not doing it. Like any narrative that's not Chester died by suicide, I don't support it. Now, I know better than this, okay, guys? I was not surprised. I wasn't exactly expecting, although I could have been. I was hopeful that he might do something a little different, but of course he didn't. And I told him, I said, well, you know, consent is the most important thing there is. So if you do not want to speak about this anymore, I will not speak about it with you anymore. And he said, I don't want to speak about it anymore. I said, okay. And then we left it for 2 more weeks. Now, before we move on to the next interaction with Sean, which would happen at the end of the month of March, I think it's important to explain something about myself. In the same way that I can take it or leave it, meaning that if it doesn't feel right or look right, I'm not doing it and nothing will be forced, as I said. I'm also one to be totally disconnected from time, because over the last 6 years, I've made the conscious effort to totally dislocate myself from the societal tradition of time. So the time that passed between the initial conversation, the follow-up text, and this interaction, it wasn't a month. It was just period. 2 weeks later, I hit Sean up. I'm like, hey man, I know it's been a while, but I didn't forget about you. I am still thinking about the thing. And this guy fires off immediately, okay? He's like, you backstabbed us on purpose. You think people wait for assholes like you to make up your mind about things. This was already done so long ago. Like, going ham. And I was like, hey, Sean, I'm not having this conversation with you if you're going to talk to me like this. And he kept talking to me, so I gave him a call and I said, Sean, what is this hate that you're giving me? He's like, hey, Jamie, I don't hate you. I love you. I can express my feelings and still love you. And I said, Sean, I'm not talking about literal hate. I'm talking about the obvious discomfort you feel when I'm speaking to you right now. This is what he tells me, okay? This guy, he goes, the publishing company told us that you refused to sign the contract. You stabbed us in the back on purpose. I said, Sean, what are you talking about? He's like, this was due like 3 weeks ago, blah, blah, blah. I was like, where's your due diligence? You're the businessman here. My approval doesn't even matter. You guys went with a different song anyways? Question mark? Wow, that's crazy. I must have been so pivotal to the process that it warrants this kind of interaction right now. And he said, you know what, Jamie, you want to make this a problem? I'll make this a fucking problem. I'll meet you in the fucking parking lot. Motherfucker. Now, I'm not Sean. I don't know what he deals with on a daily basis in terms of business, in terms of mental scape. I don't know. So this is all, again, much more of an acknowledgement of what was said and done with who than it is an attack or an invitation to attack. Leave these people alone unless you are going to be a part of the solution. I am very, 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 very serious about this. And in fact, if you aren't going to engage with this in that way, as a part of the solution, I will have something to say about it. People even come up in my DMs right now telling me all sorts of shit about Talinda that's not true or misrepresentative, and I correct them. I don't let them say hurtful shit about people that's not true. So let's get back to it. Back to the story. Yes, so Sean and I are on the phone and he's saying these things to me. And let me be clear. Publishing did not send me a contract. I never heard from them again. That's the first red flag. When someone tells you something happened that did not happen, remember that it didn't happen. To make things more interesting, they said that the company themselves said that I wouldn't do it, which is also false because I didn't talk to them. And the person I talked to at Concord Publishing specifically said they have no access to higher management. They cannot pass messages along. They don't even know what's going on. They're just doing their job on the most basic level. My response to Sean was pretty fucking firm. See, in these situations, like most situations that I find myself in, the people around Chester seem to kind of forget who the fuck I am. And unfortunate for Sean, I, at that point in time, was well past the point of being ignored, belittled, or I like the word I used earlier, so I'll use it again, dislocated from the memory of my own father. With that being said, my response to Sean was pretty firm and pretty fucking immediate. We ain't playing this game, homie. I said, neither you or the publishing company followed up with me. You knew how crazy my life was. You knew what I was going through. And you never tried to circle back and check in. The only time we did that is when I sent you a text about following up with you about your thoughts on the evidence I sent you. Remember, one of the things that Sean said about the situation was that the publishing company had told him that I refused to sign the contract. I told Sean, why, after our conversations, our recent conversations, and everything you know about me, everything you've witnessed throughout my lifetime, would you listen to a third party's perspective on my perspective and not put in the necessary effort to suss that out? Why wouldn't you come ask me what I was thinking and why? You got my number, but you know. And then comes, of course, the most aggressive part of my response, which is the part in which I have to acknowledge myself in the situation. I said very clearly, Sean, who the fuck do you think you're fucking talking to? Like so many other people around Chester, you seem to have forgotten where the fuck you started and where the fuck you is. So let me remind you, I am Chester's oldest son. You do not speak to me that way. And if you want to catch me outside, motherfucker, you want to catch me the fuck outside. You want to meet me in a fucking parking garage? Bitch, I'll meet you. I said, I'll meet you. I'll meet you in the fucking parking garage, Sean. You so big and fucking tough. Let's see how fucking tough you really are. Don't be playing games like this. This is not a game. This is not a joke. You say some shit like that, I'm bound to meet you. But Sean didn't stop. He didn't want to stop the conversation. And so we got off the phone. And he continued to text me. And I said something along the lines of like, Sean, this isn't fucking high school. I have the text still. I'm sure that I'll share the texts and also the voice memo that I sent him afterwards, after this entire thing happened, to close it out. Because, you know, liability. I'm sure that it would be helpful, right? Anyways. Since the texts weren't helping, I sent him an audio message, and it basically said, you're a self-made millionaire, you're a white man in this context, and you're a master Freemason. You have far too much responsibility on your plate to be abusing your power the way that you are, and how fucking dare you leverage your wealth and affluence against someone like me who can't help themselves. And you know that. You're a fucking bully. If you ever talk to me like that again, if you ever threaten me again, I will not only get me involved, I'll get whoever the fuck I can get involved, because it's not a fair fight at all. There's nothing fair about anything that I experience. And like I said, y'all don't know what kind of God of War energy I've been cultivating. And on the flip side, you also don't know what kind of God of love energy I've been cultivating. So although I'm a bit fiery right now, just keep in mind that there's a reason for the flame, and that when circumstance changes, so too will the quality of such flames being distributed. Since this interaction with Sean, he hasn't said anything. In fact, he's just buckled down on all of his bad behavior. Within days of our conversation, he tacked more shows on to the Grade A's impersonation tour. Shortly after that, he made it public that he had divorced his wife of a very long time. And then, of course, we have the article claiming that he says he's looking to take Grade A's beyond Chester Bennington with this impersonator, seeing as though they toured together and they enjoyed it. Now, before we get to the biggest point, let me backtrack to the thing I said was supposed to be in the story, but I kind of forgot that it was a part of the story because it seems so detached in retrospect and thinking on my feet, okay? So here's what it is. I typically, when I lived at my last apartment, when I was helping raise my nephew, I typically walk my dog about every night, a mile or two, no matter the conditions. And while I do that, I listen to music and I channel through music, and that's basically what I do. And all of a sudden, Brennan, Sean's oldest son, came through. And we hadn't talked in a while because one of the biggest things that I've had to grapple with is, especially during the period of investigation, is who can be talked to about what and how dangerous could they potentially be if they double cross you. I hadn't spoken to Brennan since I attended the tracking sessions for amends back in 2019, 2018, something like that. And so it was surprising to find, it was surprising for me that he answered the phone at all. But that he answered it excited to hear my voice and to see that I was calling, and that he was currently in the middle of watching one of my favorite movies in the past, Birdman, which I thought was just great, you know. And I told him literally my entire story, and I told him that I believed Sean was involved in some shady shit, and that if he isn't, he at least certainly looks like he's involved in some shady shit. It was a couple of weeks after I told Brennan my story, and I asked him not to tell Sean for the time being so that I could work on my project and say what I wanted to say in my own time, which I didn't end up getting to do anyways. Oh, I have to pee so bad. I've been laying in here forever. Oh my God. It was a couple of weeks after this conversation with Brennan that I randomly received this Concord email. And in our initial conversation, I told Sean that I had talked to Brennan a little bit about, my project, and that I had asked him not to say anything for the time being. And that, in my mind, part of the panic and anxiety I was feeling before I called him, and of course while I was talking to him, was a product of not knowing whether or not I had been double-crossed. And Sean laughed that one off. Sean told me that he had no idea I spoke to Brennan, that was a surprise to him, and of course not. The email was not a lure. And that may be true. Who knows? Maybe I put the idea in his head. Who fucking can really tell, because, people don't be talking. But the truth of the matter is this. I spoke to Brennan. A couple of weeks later, I got an email, a nonsensical email, an inappropriate email, an unprofessional email that should have never happened under any circumstance. It led me into a conversation with Sean. When I spoke to Sean the first time, he heard me out. He heard my story, the fully updated version of it. He said he would stand up for me. He said that he would show me privileged information. Then I offered to give him some of the evidence that I found for myself. He said he would take it. 2 weeks pass, he says nothing. I hit him up. I'm like, dude, what did you see? How do you feel about this? This is pretty serious. I haven't heard anything from you. And he's like, it's a rabbit hole. Don't pursue it. I don't take anything except for the major narrative, and I don't want to talk about this anymore. He walked back on every single thing he said in the previous conversation, and he closed off any more communication about the thing that I was talking about. And what happened after that? Oh, that's right. I circled back to Sean to tell him I hadn't forgotten about him. He immediately attacked me, gaslit me, tried to lure me into a fight. When we got on the phone, he lied to me straight to my face about what did and didn't happen with the publishing company and the DLC deal. Which, of course, ended with me reminding him who I am, what his responsibilities are, and drawing a line for what I will and will not accept in terms of communication and engagement, interaction. Speak you that way, treat me that way, period. Story complete. Thank you so much for sitting through that. I appreciate that. I promise next time I do something like this, it won't be this way, but I was hacked, so I had to do it, and it's just gotta be this way for now, okay? So then, what is the point, Jamie? What is it that we endured this story for? What is all of this context? That's a great question. Thank you. I appreciate you all. I had to pee. I didn't realize how bad I had to pee, so I did it. Now I'm back. I'm not sure if the last story uploaded fully. I can't remember if there was anything after where it seems to cut off, so I'm just gonna roll with it. Why does all this context matter, Jamie? What is the big thing that you're trying to say? Thank you for asking. The answer to that question is there's no way of knowing who I can trust. There's no way of knowing who's involved. The things that I've shared are things that people have died for sharing in less detail. And so, in the event that there's anyone, and so, if there are any people watching who do not have my best interests in mind, I would like to state clearly for the record that I am not suicidal, that I intend to be an active participant in the conversation likely to be generated by these projections, that in no major way do I intend to modify these projections, or do I intend to modify my social media accounts, Instagram, or YouTube. I apologize, I misspoke on that last one. Of course, I intend to modify my YouTube account. This modification does not extend to new content. What I'm saying is, and this is now for the audience, there are imposters afoot, as well as phantoms. Please be aware of the difference, and please know who you're talking to, because I'll tell you what, you have plenty of material to identify me by, and given the fact that within 2 hours of saying something about what I've been through, even if it was in support of a friend, we were both hacked. So, if anybody shows up saying anything from my mouth and it's not coming to you this way or through the ways in which you know I'll give it to you, please know the difference. We got to protect each other. And finally, with all of that being said, I am back for good, and I intend to investigate as thoroughly as possible whatever form that takes. And I will be coming for those who have covered me up, covered my father up, and abused the both of us. You know who I'm talking to, don't you, Anna? And that's my God-given right, man. So I'm doing this for the kids. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for my father. Because I'll tell you what, nothing makes me sadder than making it to the bottom layers of hell and finding my father enshrouded in ice, stabbed in the back. I'm coming for you, Daddy. And it's a new world. The timeline has shifted. Before I jump off this proverbial plank into the proverbial open ocean and begin this conscious phase of my evolution, I think it's important to circle back to the God of love within me, because I am here to heal and to help. Some bad things happened, and so they must be stimulated in order for healing to occur. Unfortunately, what this means is that even though I don't mean to be the bearer of suffering, suffering in some cases must be had. In the same way that if you fall while you're running and you get road rash and you get some rocks in it and a scab forms over the rocks, when you go to the doctor to get that thing looked at, they're gonna have to scrub the scab and get the rocks out, okay? I want the truth. I want peace, and not just for me, but for us. That feels good. It feels good to get it off my chest. Yeah! Woo! In conclusion, I would like to offer a resolution, some of which I have already spoken much earlier in the story. Over the last 6 years, I have grown into my adulthood, learning from observation the ways in which our society has, is, and seemingly will continue to devour the disadvantaged and the exploited, while those responsible for this carnage do everything they can to evade repercussion for their actions and to negatively impact and impede constructive, meaningful change. As a 27-year-old Caucasian male born into this modern American context, I see it as my responsibility to observe these behaviors, name them, and put an end to them, transmute them into love and light. As a child of the beast who has come to confront themselves, to learn their madness, It is my responsibility to say aloud and in public that I do not accept the circumstance in which I was born into. That I will not be participating in this context on the terms given any longer. I will be the change that I wish to see in the world. And for those of you in power, you've made it very clear to me that you do not respect the energy that I loan to you. And so I will be forced now to take back my throne whether you like it or not. And I'm coming for the crown, baby. Again, thank you very much for participating in this process. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for trying. It means a lot to me to be able to express myself in this way after so many years, more than 6, but definitely the last 6. And to be heard fully, seen fully by those of you who are engaging with me. And I feel good about it. And to all of those I may have angered and may potentially anger in the future, why can't we be friends? Did you kill my dad? It's a real question. Don't you look at me like that.